Hi guys, and welcome to the Madhouse podcast where we talk all things darts. We're your host Owen Miles,
And I'm Andrew Prone.
and in today's podcast we're talking about the increases in funding for all the PDC events, as well as we're talking about and the players' thoughts on that, as well as we'll also be talking about the Premier League format and should there be a change. First of all, we will chat about the funding, as it was announced a few weeks ago that all funding in the PDC is going to be increased, as well as an expansion of the World Championship to 128 players from the 96, as well as the Grand Slam being increased to 48 players from 32. The World Championship from next year, from the start of this year into next year, will also include the winner getting over £1 million, with all other funding being increased, including the affiliate tours such as the Asian Tour and the Women's Tour. We talked to Hamish Thomas about his thoughts on the funding increase.
I think the prize money in the PDC can only be seen as a good thing because it means it gives players more of an incentive to stay in the sport for longer. We'll get to see the doubly shocked expression on Luke Littler's face next year when he finds out he's won £1 million. And I think it's also important to keep the lower ranked players outside of the top 32 involved as well. So it's nice that that's been increased to 15,000 for the top 128 that get knocked out in the first round of the World Champs.
It's all really exciting for the fans especially, but what do the players think of this?
Well, I personally say that for the current Premier League players, it's a real challenge having to balance Premier League, Pro Tour, Euro Tour. Sometimes they're playing at least 3 days a week, which can be a tough. And that's been seen with big names such as Luke Humphries talking out about the impact that Darcy's having on his mental health. He like other players, does miss a few of the Pro Tour events to give himself a much needed break. And in the future, it can be assumed that even more of the big guns, the Luke Littler, Michael Van Goens, will have to miss almost as well, just to keep their mental health in check.
Yeah. In my opinion, like you say, I think some events there is a lot more than maybe they should have. I like some of the events, and but some events should be cut. I think I love the Euro Tour, and I love how it stands for. It helps a lot of players play their first ever event on a big stage. But also there's just loads and loads of Euro Tours. I understand with the European Championship, but you can tell when not many people are going to go to it if they know that, your Luke Littlers, your Luke Humphries, your Peter Wrights, your Michael Van Goens aren't going to be there. And I love some of the, events that aren't ranked, such as the World Cup, which we have in a couple of weeks. But for a lot of people, that is low priority. Example with Michael Van Goen, he knew in December he was not going to play in this tournament, and it's the reason why he is not. So it's something that a lot of fans really like about events like that, but there is probably a possibility that the event should be cut or at least stripped back. But you're looking now at an 128 player World Championship, as well as a 48 Grand Slam, and we don't know what the format is yet. What do you think they're going to go? Because in my opinion, I'm probably going to say that, like they've been doing with the Euro Tour, it'll probably be seedings. We could see the World Champ, the 32 maybe coming in round 3. And then with the Grand Slam, maybe we'll have the group stage that it is now, but then you have an expanded knockout stage with the top 16 going in first.
I reckon with the Grand Slam format, I would prefer personally if it was 16 groups of 3, each player playing 2 games against the other 2 in the group, and then just the top person from the group going through to them would be the round of 16. I feel like that puts more pressure on the big players, because that means that if they lose one game, they're probably out. And I feel like that makes the tournament better personally. And then also, if each player was to win, say, 1 game, then they'll be very open with them all on 2 points. Whereas if they did 8 groups of 4, which we're currently doing, I feel like it's a bit easier for the top 16, because then they'll probably get a bye into the round of 16, which I feel like it would be too easy for them.
On other news, the Premier League is in full flight at the moment, and Luke Littler is having a great season so far in the Premier League. But for a lot of people, the format that happened just a couple of years ago has not really proved popular with some fans. They're saying that it's a bit boring, also haven't seen 3 people in one night, and they would prefer either a different format or even back with the original format that was before 2022. We talked again to Hamish Thomas about his thoughts on that too.
I think it's a nice idea having one nightly winner every single week and there being a tournament every week. But I think after a while it does just get repetitive, and you can sort of see how the season's going to pan out. For example, we've seen it this season with Luke Littler just running away with it, and Stephen Bunting, well, not having the best of campaigns, to put it nicely. I think if it's going to change, there's got to be something different every week. And I think for me, that's only going to be adding new players into it. So it might be a case of you cut it down to 6 regular players and you have 2 guests every week. Now those guests could appear a couple nights throughout the season each. But I think although it might not be fair on merit, it might be good for the sport and just for the excitement of the fans to have players like your Ricky Evans, like your Leonard Gates, those sort of big characters, if you like.
Yeah, with what Hamish said, I think was a perfect idea. Having maybe, if you want to stick with the same format they have in recent times, maybe having 2 guest players, maybe from the area that they're touring, or like you say, having someone like Ricky Evans, or even going for someone like Beau Greaves, for example, who's had a great year, got faced Humphreys at the UK Open, nearly beat Humphreys. So I think that is a good idea if they want to stick with the original format, but the format they're using at the moment. But I would love them to go back to the 10-team format, or even the 9 with the contenders, because I did really like that back in 2020.
I feel like with the current format, like Hamish said, if we did include, say, 2 players each week, I feel like it could be, say the event was in the Netherlands, for example, then I would have 2 decent Dutch players, people like Kevin Dukes, to get a chance of playing in the Premier League for the first time. And also, as well as it's a third point, I would like to say that obviously all the Premier League events are only in the UK, with 1 in Berlin and 1 in Rotterdam. I feel countries like Belgium deserve a further opportunity to have a Premier League night. And then with that, people like Van den Berg could take part, and also Mike De Decker as well.
I also think that the World Series has done really well with the US and the US being now events being held at the theatre at Madison Square Garden, obviously a massive venue for combat sports. And we've seen the last few years how big Africa's got. Obviously that went viral with Tchuri and the qualifier. Do you think maybe the possibility the Premier League could go to like America or South America or Africa or Asia, for example, where there is a burgeoning market at the moment?
I think I'll definitely grow the sport in some ways to give further opportunities. People like Leonard Gates, I'm sure, would love a Premier League night. And also, that should bring bigger crowds in as well, which should also further grow the sport in these different contests, try and make it more of a worldwide sport. So yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Obviously, it's a busy time for darts at the moment. We'll be back next week talking about all the recent news as well as what we think will happen in the coming future. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.